At Montford High School, we're also moving to becoming a PBL school, and the 8 essentials of the PBL are that you have a driving question, that you have significant content, need to know, in-depth inquiry, 21st century skills, voice and choice, revision and reflection, and public audience. And also we added the end product. This was something that the leadership team felt like it was important because we want to make sure that the end product answers the driving question and that the driving question is a real world scenario for the students. The overall PBL sometimes can be really overwhelming to a teacher, and so Mr. Wilkinson broke it down for us on this fishbone where we could look into smaller EBLs, what we call EBLs, which is evidence-based learning. And within this evidence-based learning, this would put the students in a what-if situation, a what-if scenario that they could actually be in one day, where they are put in a place where they've got to answer a serious real-world question. And within this real-world question are I can statements, and that goes back to our complex thinking skills that we talked about earlier, where the students, I can analyze, I can evaluate. We're going to use those verbs that we're going to train our students how to think. And one I can statement cannot answer the EBL for that scenario, but several I can statements could possibly give the students the tools that they need in order to answer that EBL. And all of these EBLs are going to kind of be underneath the same umbrella of some type of real world scenario, and all of these EBLs, once these questions have been answered, are going to give our students the ability to put these together and all their thinking skills to help them answer the bigger driving question, the overarching thing, which we refer to as the PBL. Okay. An example of our fishbone EBL, PBL scenario, one that Mr. Wilkinson did, and you have to get inside his head. He doesn't think quite as deep as some of us. But he wanted to know, how can we upset the defending state champions and current #1 ranked team on our basketball schedule? That's the driving question, the PBL. And so all of these EBL scenarios are going to point to that for the students to be able to answer it. So one of the EBL scenarios is, what if the big game comes down to the final minute and the crowd and the game are crazy? How are we as a team going to handle the pressure? And that would be a what if scenario that the students could help them answer the driving question. And a few of the I can statements there, I can connect the pressure to our team game-like situations from practice. I can evaluate our toughness from stats versus regular season opponents. And I can hypothesize how we will handle pressure by playing in prior close games. So this one EBL gives the students a great idea about how they could maybe become more mentally tough to beat this defending state championship team. But that alone is not going to answer the PBL. It's going to take more support from the teacher, more real-world scenarios for the students to be able to have enough tools in their tool belt in order to properly address the driving question. Okay, this is another way for the EBL and PBL to be broken down into a way that you can kind of see how the progression works. So we start with 1 to 2 weeks of daily outcomes becomes several I can statements. And these are your objectives and your content that you're actually covering. Content that's going to answer the what if question of the EBL for that 1 to 2 week period. You're going to do several of these blocks of 2 weeks so that answer these EBLs, and then at the end of that, say 6 to 8 week unit, you're going to be able to address the PBL and the driving question for the students. Now they'll have all of the information that they need in order to answer the PBL. So when we take one riblet of this fishbone, which is one section of the EBL, so this is one what if statement followed by however many I can statements you have that would address your content for this that the students need to have in order to address the EBL. We take this, and our leadership team developed a lesson plan format that could go along with the strategic lesson. So you're looking at the driving question, which is going to be the overarching theme that you're going to always refer to every lesson so the students understand why they're learning what they're learning. The EBL, which is going to be the what if scenario that puts the students into a real life situation that they can actually relate to of, okay, this is why I need to learn this content. And then you're going to have your outcome, which is your thinking skill. That's going to be your analyze or your evaluate or your problem solving. And then underneath this, we're going to always have a bell ringer to start out our lesson, and the bell ringer can't just be there. There has to be a purpose for it. So the leadership team decided that it would be best for teachers to have to actually write out the purpose so that they would be thinking about why they're having students do what they're doing. In addition to that, we know that our students need to read in order to be college and career ready. And so every day we have committed to having some sort of text for our students to read within our own content area. And within that, we're going to have a before, during, and after reading strategy that's going to help them to read and understand the text for the day for our class. In addition to that, we're going to definitely have times of chunking and discussion to address the 5 components of strategic teaching. And underneath this, we want to make sure that we're asking quality questions. And in order to ask good quality questions, teachers have to plan for them. So you have to think ahead of time, what can I ask my students that's going to make them think deeper on a deeper level? And then there needs to be a purpose for those questions. Then the students will have some sort of purposeful small group working on the work where they have a chance to investigate and where there's going to be some sort of end product for that day to address your content or your I can statement. Purposeful groups. It's very important that students are put in groups purposely by the teacher. If you just tell students to group together with their friends, you're never going to have people working on skills that they need to work on. We have students that are terrible communicators. We need to put them in roles where they're having to communicate with their classmates and communicate with the teachers so that they can strengthen those weaknesses. Or we might have some that aren't good leaders and we need to put them in leadership roles to make sure that they're working on becoming a 21st century learner, becoming college and career ready. We have to provide opportunities for them to do that. In addition to this, we're going to definitely always scaffold quality questionings to our groups. And these quality questions are going to be even deeper than the previous ones. And we're going to end with a power question. Now, the power question is going to be the big question at the end of the lesson that's going to make them think deeper. You will not have explicitly stated to them anything that related to this. They're going to have to take all that they learned throughout the 90 minutes that they're in your room. They're going to have to take all that they learned, put it together to answer this one power question. What we do is we have some kind of signal to let them know that we're about to ask them the power question. We ask them this deep thinking question and give them time for them to think about it individually. After we give them time to think about it, we have wait time where we're not saying anything, the students aren't saying anything, and then we allow them to turn and collaborate with a partner or with their group for them to put their heads together, because this isn't a question that's easy for them to answer. And so after they have collaborated together, then we come back together as a group and we allow our students to share their ideas. And sometimes this causes the teacher to scaffold more, because there's lots of times that the students will be on the surface of answering the power question. We have to make them think deeper to actually get to the deepest part of this to be able to understand our content. And so we have to purposefully scaffold so that they can get deeper into our content. The students also then, at the end, there's going to be some sort of assessment by the end product. And we need to know how many of our students have mastered the content at the end of our lesson. And we need to have proof of that. So at the end of the week, Mr. Wilkinson would collect maybe one sample of a student that had mastered the content and one sample that had not mastered. If I'm at the end of my math lesson and I have 7 out of 20 students that have mastered that content for the day, then my students are not ready to move on to the next thing. And so I need to make note of that, change my lesson plans, figure out where they're making the mistakes, and address it the next day. And so this will give our students a more opportunity to be successful. We also look at this from a different perspective of how the work is being compiled, that for the beginning of the lesson, especially, and when we're doing the text, that this is a lot of teacher models for the students, what's expected of them, but also that the students are working with the teacher to reach this outcome, to understand this objective. After this has taken place, we look at the y'all do. And this is where our students are working together. And in this y'all do scenario, you will always see leaders that are emerging that either already understand this concept or grasp it very quickly. And when that happens, we turn them and we make them teachers, and they help us. They walk around and help with other groups or with students that are struggling. And during this time, teachers can also pull students that are struggling to the back of the room to a table to really work with a small group of students who just do not understand it at all. And then after that has taken place, we go to the you do. And this is where the students are working on it on their own so that we can truly understand if they mastered the content.